Today we're talking with Darlene Duggan, who is the president of the Anti-Cruelty Society in Chicago. And it is probably our oldest animal shelter in Chicago and certainly one of the oldest in the country. And they do remarkable work. And so it's part of our series talking about animal shelters. And so, Darlene, let's get right into it. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you so much, Virginia, for having me. I'm delighted to have this conversation and to honored to have been invited onto your podcast.
Well, we're honored to have you. And I'm, having grown up in Chicago, I'm a big fan of the Anti-Cruelty Society. My first dog, Charlie Brown, in fact, came from the Anti-Cruelty Society of Chicago.
That's
So
so sweet. I love that name. That's a great name.
it was a great name, and he was a great dog. Oh my gosh. So smart, so loving, totally devoted, and just lots of fun. So
Oh, so
he,
sweet.
he knew so many tricks, and we had so much fun with him. Great
Uh,
dog for a kid, you know?
yeah,
That's
wonderful,
the best
wonderful.
way to describe it, and
Hmm.
certainly fueled my passion for
Hmm.
dogs.
Yeah.
So we're glad to have you on Corey's Canine Corner podcast. Let's start out. For those who might not be familiar with the Anti Cruelty Society, could you tell us a little bit about your long and rich history?
Yeah, for sure. Happy to. So, anti-cruelty is what we call a Chicago institution. It has been here for literally 127 years. We, in fact, just celebrated last month our 127th anniversary. And we were founded in the late 1800s, early 1900s, based off of the principles of just humane treatment of animals. And that looked very different 127 years ago than it does today, but the principles remain the same. Our organization was founded by Rose Faye Thomas, who was brought to Chicago through her father, through her family connections with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. And when she arrived in Chicago, kind of took a look around and noticed that the conditions for workhorses specifically, but animals in general, weren't up to at least her standards of the time. And so she, with a sort of like-minded group of women, got together to figure out and find solutions for what they could do about it, how they could influence, maybe even some policy change or some cultural change, attitude change towards animals. And so that's really how the anti-cruelty was founded. Early in our tenure or early in our history, we actually also participated in child welfare as well. And that's a really interesting piece of our history that I love to tell, is that we had animal welfare laws and services before we had child welfare laws and services. And so,
Wow.
as things developed, thankfully, sort of child welfare and animal welfare didn't have to fall under the same umbrella anymore. But I think that's a really unique piece of our history, is that for a period of time, we even were caring for children at that time. Early on, a lot of the conditions for workhorses, as I mentioned earlier, were being addressed. So, for things like introducing mandatory breaks for the horses in the city, or introducing respite periods, the Anti-Cruelty Society would set up watering troughs around the city of Chicago or around the areas where many of the workhorses were stationed or were working, so that they could stop and take a break and get some fresh, cold water. In fact, we actually still have one of those old water troughs in our lobby. So it's a really cool piece of history that we have from, our very early beginnings.
That is just a very remarkable history, and especially interesting to think that child welfare needed to be addressed by the same organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's stunning to me. And every time I talk about it, that we had animal welfare laws before we had child welfare laws. And I think that's indicative of how far we've come as a city and as a society and as a culture. But also, it's really humbling to be a part of and leading an organization now that has such deep roots in a lot of the cultural aspects of animal welfare within our community.
Yeah. And deep roots dating back to 1899, do I recall?
1899. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yep,
that's
we just snuck in at the turn of the century there.
that is so amazing.
Uh,
So your long history, I'm sure you've evolved over time, and maybe you could tell us, what does the Anti-Cruelty Society look like today?
Yeah, so we consider ourselves one of the most comprehensive shelters in our region. I think most people equate us with animal intake and adoptions, and that certainly is at the core of what we do and will always remain at the core of what we do. But there's so much more to us than that. At the heart of it all, we support the human animal bond. And so a lot of our focus, a lot of our programming, a lot of our resources are sort of directed towards that human animal bond. On the clinical side of things, of course, we have a full functioning clinic that helps take care of the animals in our care, but it also serves the public through a low cost spay neuter program. It serves the public through an access to care program, which is really intended to be for folks who are maybe on a limited income or don't have as many ready access to resources to care for their pets. They can come and receive, some wellness care for their animals in the shelter here, or rather owned animals not in the shelter, so that we can prevent animals coming into the shelter to begin with. We have a humane education department that runs groups with school children and with camps, corporate humane education with adult learning as well. We have a field service division, which are the folks who sort of go out into the community and assess the needs of the community at that level. So they abuse and neglect cases, wellness checks, sort of all of that type of concern that the community might have about some of the animals or the support that the community might need for some of their animals. Our field service team will respond to calls about, it's extremely warm today and there's a dog down the street that has been outside for a few days now. Or sometimes in the winter, we'll get requests to do wellness checks on some cats that might be known to be living underneath someone's front porch or within an abandoned building. All sorts of calls for help from our field service slash humane investigations team. Um, Everything in between. I sort of think of anti-cruelty as all of that and the kitchen sink. Certainly, we have support services, business support services. So we have a development team, we have a facilities team, we have a finance team. It's a whole comprehensive organization at Anti-Cruelty.
Well, and one of the ways I like to describe you is you're there for not just the animals, but for the people who love them from the
Yep.
beginning of the animal's life until beyond its death. Because I know you also have grief
Mhm.
counseling programs. Is that correct?
Yeah, we do. Absolutely. We do offer end of life services. So for people who's, need to euthanize their animal at the end of their life, they can come to the anti-cruelty to receive those services from our clinic staff. It is free of charge. We ask for a donation. If someone can give us $5, that's fabulous. If somebody can give us $500, that's fabulous as well. And if you can't give us anything, you'll still receive the same services. But with that also comes the post care for the person involved. I'm sure most of your listeners have had the experience of having to say goodbye to a beloved pet. It's not easy. It is not an easy thing to
It
do.
can
And
be crushing.
it can be crushing.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we do offer grief counseling. We offer support services, groups of like-minded individuals or folks that are traveling a similar journey, gather together to sort of talk about the process and talk about their beloved pets and just sort of try and heal together. So that is something that we offer the community as well.
So you've got a lot going on, but I know the Anti Cruelty Society is always changing and evolving to meet the needs of our animal community and the people who love them. So tell us more. what the future looks like.
Yeah, so the future is exciting. I am really revved up for what the future for anti-cruelty as well as animal welfare in general is looking like. Anti-cruelty in the future hopes to introduce some new programming that will help us solidify that human animal bond and will help us to prevent relinquishment into the shelter. I joke with our staff and our volunteers often of, our goal is to put ourselves out of business. We want to get so good at supporting the community that the community doesn't need us anymore. And one of the ways that we're hoping to do that is to introduce training classes for privately owned animals. Similar to what we saw, I would say in the late 80s, mid 90s with the advent of high volume spay neuter, where shelters really started to get into the spay neuter aspect of animal welfare in order to prevent unwanted litters, in order to control the population. I think we're at a similar turning point right now in animal welfare where a lot of the animals, specifically dogs, that are relinquished to our shelter have a lot of behavior needs. Either they haven't received basic training, so they hit that adolescent age where their manners are not what they should be, and it's a little disruptive to the family, or it's a little bit hard for the family to control. And so a lot of these animals that come to us, we see with a lack of training in their background. So one of the initiatives that we're hoping to be able to introduce into the community in the coming years are training courses, affordable training, access to affordable training courses for any animal that needs it, but specifically for young adolescent animals, dogs that are really impressionable and can really use that boost of stimulation, of knowledge gain, and can really solidify their learning within their family.
Wow, that's exciting. That's
Yeah.
really great because
Mhm.
am I correct in understanding that the number one reason people give up their pets is due to behavioral issues?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. And so many of those behavior issues or those relinquishments that we see can be addressed or could have been addressed or avoided even with early training or early sort of obedience training for the dogs, whether that is something that is done with a one-on-one trainer or in a group setting, or even just with the owner, in their own home. We want to be able to support that and encourage that and really be able to bring that service to the community.
Okay. And speaking of your services, we're kind of focused on dogs today because Corey's Canine Corner is news for dogs and the people who love them. But anti-cruelty is not just dogs, right? And
No, we're not. In fact, we are an open door shelter. And for us, that means that we will accept any animal in any condition. And so it's not just dogs, it is cats, it's guinea pigs, it's rabbits, it's hamsters and gerbils and mice. And we have had snakes and lizards and birds and fish, even. Every now and again, we'll get chickens and goats and pot-bellied pigs. And one of my favorite animals that has come through the shelter has been a peacock.
oh my
I
gosh,
Yes, so we've seen
peacock.
some interesting things come through. The
And wait,
majority,
I've just got to ask on that.
yeah,
A peacock.
it was
Did
stray. Believe it or not, it had a home, it had a family, it wandered out of their backyard. Someone else picked it up because who would ever think you'd see a peacock walking down the street in the city of Chicago, and ended up bringing it to our shelter. And I think when a peacock goes missing, that's sort of a newsworthy story. And so the family was out looking for it, and through word of mouth had found out that it was brought to anti-cruelty. So we were able to reunite them pretty quickly, but it made for a really fun, exciting experience for sure for
I
everybody
bet.
involved.
I would never have thought of a peacock being
Yeah.
a pet in the city
Yes.
in the city of Chicago.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's very interesting. The majority of what we adopt out are dogs and cats, and we do also do small animal adoptions. Again, mostly rabbits, guinea pigs, hamsters, gerbils, mice, and rats. Anything else that we get outside of that sort of umbrella of animals, we work with other partners, other shelters, other rescues in our area that have expertise in that particular animal. So again, we'll take anything. It doesn't matter what their medical status is. It does not matter what their behavior status is. We are truly an open door for any animal that needs our help.
Okay, so I'm glad you raised this issue about working with other organizations because I
Mhm.
do want to touch on that on how so in my mind, and please correct me if you have a better way of describing it, there's three kinds of shelters basically.
Mhm.
There's
Mhm.
the municipal shelter, like the City of Chicago Animal Care and Control Shelter, which is run by the City of Chicago. And where I
Yep.
live in Evanston, we have a similar shelter, the
Yep.
Evanston Animal Shelter. Um, there's what I call private shelters, and if there's a better term, please let me know. But that would encompass an organization like the Anti-Cruelty Society, which does not report to or necessarily get funding from any government entity. And then there's breed club shelters. So I know the American Kennel Club, each breed club has a rescue program. Um, for my breed, the Tibetan Terriers, that's how we actually got Corey. He
Mhm.
was rescued by the Tibetan Terrier Club of America Health and Wellness Fund and needed a quiet home with access to cardiac care, and we were able to provide it, so we were able to adopt him. But
Mhm.
um, tell me a little bit, is that a fair description, first of all?
Yeah, you hit
And
the nail
then,
on the head. That's absolutely accurate.
okay, and then how do you work with other animal health and welfare organizations, whether it's a municipal entity like Chicago Animal Cares and Controls or a specialty organization like a rabbit rescue or a donkey rescue or whatever whatever's brought a peacock rescue
Right,
whatever's brought
exactly.
into your doors.
That must be Morgan
That
letting us
is
know.
Morgan is doing his job, which is to bark at any bird that flies by or person that
Oh,
walks down the street.
good boy, Morgan.
He'll be
Um,
quiet in he'll be quiet in one moment.
okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Um, yes, so that is an absolute accurate description of all of the different types of animal welfare organizations. We refer to it as an ecosystem or just a system. And I think the most important thing to note for talking through all of the different types is that no one type of organization or no one organization is going to be capable, at least in the city of Chicago, which has such a robust human population and such a robust culture. No one organization is ever going to be able to carry the load or meet the needs of the community on their own. And so the system works because everybody works together. And when we're not working together, that's when we get a lot of fragmentation. That's when we see a lot of disruption in services. All of these groups have different sort of ways to get to the same goal. And so when we work in concert together, that's when we can really push impact. That's when we can really affect change. And that's when we can really sort of drive home a collective voice and messaging on behalf of the animals. Anti-cruelty in particular, so we sit kind of in the middle of your description. We are a private nonprofit organization. You're right, we don't receive any federal funding or local government funding. We are 100% supported by the community. All of our donations coming in are from generous supporters. We do receive some grant money from private foundations or from, family organizations. Um, but what really our relationship with our municipal is really to be able to take the load off of what their intake, their animal intake, that per the municipal code of the city of Chicago, they have to take every animal that comes into their facility. And so what do they do when they're overloaded? What do they do when their kennels are full and they still have a line outside of the door, or they still have community calling for support? And so we really see ourselves as a supportive partner that helps carry the burden for our municipal organization. And then below that, you will also noted that there are sort of these breed rescue organizations, or these generally smaller, generally foster-based organizations that help with a specific cohort of animals. So sometimes they are a specific breed, like the Tibetan Terriers. Sometimes they're more of a category of animals. So sometimes they're focused on senior animals, or sometimes they're focused on animals with extreme medical needs, or long-term medical or behavior modification needs. And so there's a variety. Earlier when we were joking about the peacocks or the amphibians that come in, sometimes there's, groups that focus on small animals or reptiles or birds, or, different variety. And so that really sort of is those groups are very, very helpful from the perspective of being able to specialize in care for a specific group, whether that is a specific breed, or it's an animal with a specific type of need. I like to think about the three categories functioning as an ecosystem, where if you think about a vase, and you want to fill up that vase so that every, last molecule of space is used. You have your municipal group, which is going to be a big sort of maybe brick that you put in that vase that takes up a lot of space, but it's big and it's not very agile, and it doesn't really hit all of the nuance or all of the corners. And then you sort of sprinkle in with maybe some larger rocks in all of these private nonprofit groups to fill in the gaps. And then from there you pour in the sand, and that sort of represents the smaller rescue organizations that really can get into the nooks and crannies of the vase and start filling up the volume. And so that is sort of how the animal welfare ecosystem is laid out, specifically in the city of Chicago, but that's a common model across the country.
What a great description. I love the description of the vase and the
Sure.
sand. And that really, I think, effectively illustrates how animal health and welfare hopefully works
Yeah, and we
and
all play
hopefully
a
works
part.
well.
Yeah, exactly. We all play a part. Our end goal is the same. We want that vase to be filled up, and we all do it a little differently.
Yeah. So, can you walk us through? Because I wanted to make sure that people understand, because I think, and maybe it was just me, but I think I was not clear how it works. If somebody, say, finds an abandoned animal, or for whatever reason, maybe the owner died or whatever, the animal is brought to the Anti-Cruelty Society, what exactly happens? Can you walk us through that part of it?
Sure. Yeah. If it is an owner surrender, then that means the owner is turning over um, ownership of their dog, cat, whatever it is. We take immediate ownership of that animal, and it goes immediately through our process. So we do, a behavior screening, we do a medical screening, we make sure that their vaccines are up to date and that they get seen by our veterinarian. Maybe they need spay neuter, and then they get put into our adoption program. If an animal comes into us as stray, somebody finds a stray dog or cat on the corner of the street or down the block or what have you, they can bring them here too. We do accept strays. We do transfer strays specifically that come from within the city of Chicago limits over to Chicago Animal Care and Control. They will wait their mandatory stray hold. It's different depending on whether they have identification or not. There's some nuance with how long by the law that they have to stay there. If they're reclaimed by their family, fabulous, bravo. We celebrate that reunification. And if not, they will come back to anti-cruelty, and then we put them up for adoption in our program here. And one of the reasons it might seem clunky that we have animals moving back and forth at least a couple of times. But one of the reasons that we have that policy in place is we don't want people who are genuinely looking for their lost pet to have to go from shelter to shelter to shelter, or watch multiple websites in the hopes of finding their lost animal. We want them to have to go to one place. If it's there, great. If not, then they know, where to look and where to focus their efforts in trying to find their animal again. So that really is in the animal's best interest. We have found, and there's data and studies that back this up, that if strays are housed in one location within a geographic region, the reunification of those strays with their lost owners is higher. So that really is to benefit the animals. But if they don't get reclaimed, if they truly are a stray, maybe they never had a family, or just for whatever reason the family's not out looking for them, they do get put up for adoption at Anti-Cruelty.
And so is that the policy for all Chicago animal rescue organizations? Is that a
Generally,
law or is it
generally,
just
it's
your
not a
policy?
law per se. However, there are only so many organizations per the municipal code of the city of Chicago that are allowed to hold strays or that are allowed to accept strays.
Oh,
So it's limited at that level. Not every group is equipped to handle strays. So there is some limitation there, but there are a few groups that will accept a stray and then they transfer it immediately to animal control in the same type of scenario that I just described.
so if you're in the Chicago city limits and your dog or cat or rabbit, I guess, gets lost, first place to look is at the animal care and controls.
Exactly. Yep, exactly.
Okay, excellent. Good to, that's really great to know.
Yeah, for sure.
So, so where do you get your animals from? Are they mostly owner surrenders or strays, or where do you get them from?
Yeah, the majority are owner surrenders and strays. Cats, we tend to take in more stray cats than we do stray dogs. And even at that, our species split is probably about 60-40 cats to dogs. So we lean a little bit heavier on the cat side than we do on the dog side, but it's mostly owner surrenders. It's second category are strays. And then we have this third category, which we refer to in our business as transfer in, but those are animals that come in specifically from other organizations. And that can happen for a variety of reasons. Like I just described, we work with other organizations when an animal comes through that maybe we don't have the optimized system to be able to care for. So we'll share those with other rescue groups. Similarly, sometimes we will take animals from other organizations if we know that we can care for that animal here, or if we know that we can easily adopt that animal out through our shelter. We do work with partner shelters in our region to be able to take animals where there have been maybe disasters. Maybe about 2 months ago or so, there was a tornado. There was some severe weather that kind of hit through the Kankakee area. And so we ended up taking a handful of animals from Kankakee shelters in order to free up space in their kennels if they needed to respond to the community disaster. So we get these transfer animals in from a variety of different reasons. Mostly if we're helping another shelter out from disaster or from overcrowding or that type of situation.
Okay. And then how long can an animal stay with you?
So an animal here does not never has a specific timeline. Even though we are an open admission shelter, which means that we don't have control of the animals that are coming into our care, they're welcome to stay as long as they need. We try to make this similar to a hotel. We try to be hospitable. We try to, make them enjoy their time here. And sometimes we send them to the spa, and sometimes they take nice long walks, not on the beach, but around the streets of Chicago. But no matter how nice we try to make it here, it is at the end of the day a shelter. And so our goal, we often refer to it as our goal is goodbye. We want them to get out of the shelter as quickly as possible. For some animals, that takes maybe a couple of weeks at best. And for some animals, they end up staying with us a little bit longer. And they're welcome to stay as long as they'd like. I think they often want to get out as well. So they're working their magic to try and find their new home as well. And so is our team. We're working with the animals to make sure that they're comfortable here. We have a marketing department. We have, a whole lot of specialized staff that work to promote our animals for adoption. So all of that to say that we don't have specific timelines. Certainly, though, we do look at timelines because that is a key indicator of the health and the well-being of our population management system. So if we notice that an animal is lingering a little bit too long in a specific stage, maybe it's waited a little bit too long to get its spay-neuter surgery, or maybe it's been on the floor, it's been adoptable for a couple of weeks, and we just haven't had that much interest in it yet. We note that and we sort of talk amongst ourselves of, okay, Fluffy has been with us now for over a month. So what are we going to do in order to promote Fluffy? Should we do a special social media post, or should we send out a mailing, or should we let our volunteer staff know so that they can help us sort of promote, Fluffy's case? Or, we have a variety of tools in our tool belt to sort of, make sure that the animals are moving through in a timely fashion. So that's sort of how I think about and discuss timelines. We pay attention to them, but there are not be all end all for any animal.
Okay. And, I feel like there are some myths about shelters and what
Definitely.
happens and all of that. So if we could take a little bit of time to talk about that. So there's not a clock ticking on Fluffy
Right.
at anti-cruelty, but we hear the term no-kill shelter, which implies the opposite, that
Mm,
that if you're not a quote no-kill shelter, that you're killing animals, which we
yeah.
know nobody in the shelter business wants to
Right.
do. So,
Right.
but can you talk a little bit through that to help us understand better
Yeah.
where that term comes from, what it
Sure.
means, what the impact is on the overall animal health and welfare community?
Sure. Yep. So earlier when we were talking about sort of the difference between a municipal and a private nonprofit and a rescue group, similarly, a lot of the private nonprofits and a lot of the rescues as well will call themselves no-kill facility. And there's a variety of definitions about what that actually means. And I think there's a variety of perceptions about what that actually means. The most I think accepted within the field definition of what no kill is that if your live release rate, so that literally means how many of your animals are leaving your organization alive, are it's if it's greater than 90%, then you are considered a no-kill facility. There, however, is a lot more nuance than that. Again, earlier we were discussing anti-cruelty's open admissions policy. So we will take any animal in any condition. Generally speaking, no-kill organizations limit the type and amount of intake that they will accept. And I don't mean to say that to demonize them or to, cast some shade on them, but really they are thinking more about outcome, optimizing their outcomes, what animals are going to be highly adoptable or highly placeable for them. So that's how they judge and make intake decisions, is more based on adoptability of the animal. And open admissions, an open door shelter is going to think a little bit more about an animal needs our support. We are going to open our door for them. Um, Again, earlier we had talked a little bit about end of life services at Anti-Cruelty. We do, as an open admission shelter, euthanize animals here at Anti-Cruelty. The majority of the euthanasias that we perform are actually at the owner's request. So it is, again, a service that we bring to the community. And it's one that I really like to talk about, because being a comprehensive organization and having an open admissions policy, you really have to think about the whole animal, the whole health of the animal. And so oftentimes, again, for those of us who have done it, it could be expensive to euthanize your pet at a private veterinarian. And for people that maybe have limited income or don't have as much ready access to resources to do that, they might delay, extend suffering. We all know how hard it is to know when is the right time. And so we want to be able to perform that function for the public so that they can sort of, have peace of mind. And so in fact, the majority of the euthanasias that we do are at the owner's request. And early in my career, I was a euthanasia technician, and I often talk about it was one of the most beautiful aspects of the work that we did. Hard, but beautiful. And I still get slightly choked up when I talk about the folks that would come in and they would say, 10, 15 years ago, I adopted this puppy, this kitten from you guys, and we've spent our time together, and it was wonderful and it was lovely. And I just want to be able to sort of come full circle with my pet. So sometimes it's people using the service that don't even necessarily need it from a financial support aspect, but more from a human animal bond and more from a, sort of personal aspect. And to be a part of the beginning of everybody's story and to be a part of the end of everybody's story. I apologize. This really does choke me up, and I've been going at this now for over 20 years, and it still really is impactful for me. But to be part of that journey and to be part of their family story it's an honor. And so euthanasia is not something that we take lightly in a shelter. That is a big responsibility. It is a big task that human safety, animal safety is involved in. So all of that to say that some of the animals that do find their way into our care, sometimes the more humane option for them is euthanasia, whether that's from a health perspective or a safety perspective or even a behavior perspective. And so we have spent years sort of optimizing and thinking through and being thoughtful and professional in our approach to deciding outcomes for animals. So there is a lot to sort of running an open admissions shelter. And happy to say, that even though we do euthanize here, the vast majority of our animals actually are adopted or returned to their owner or reunified with their lost families. So it's thankfully and gratefully, it's not a common occurrence in our day-to-day operations.
And I just want to be clear when you say the owner might come in and ask for euthanasia. These aren't people coming in with a 2-year-old puppy saying, it's not trainable. Can you put it down?
Yeah.
These are
No,
end
and
of life cases.
and that's a great distinction to make, because honestly, that doesn't happen all that often. The vast majority are legitimately at the end of their life. Every now and again, we will get owners that come in thinking that euthanasia is the only option because maybe Fluffy or Fido or, Scruffy or Muffy does have some sort of medical or behavior thing that they cannot address or that is too expensive for them to address it. And when that's the case, our team steps in and just says, look, this is something that we can work with. Either we can send you through our access to care clinic, we can connect you with our resources, we can connect you with a trainer, whatever the specific situation is in order to keep your pet. And if they say yes, great, then we support them in that way. And if they say, no, my lifestyle has changed, or I'm just, not capable of maintaining this animal long term, we will still put that animal through if we think that we can support that animal, we will still put it through our services and find an adopter, that will be able to do that. And again, that's where sometimes smaller, more agile rescue groups
Oh,
become critical to the work that we do, because sometimes those groups have foster homes, availability of, trained foster parents. So we work with a variety of resources when those situations present themselves. But the good news is most of the time that doesn't happen. And when it does, it's not someone with ill intentions. It's just someone who is uninformed. And so, we help them navigate the options that they have when that occurs.
that's really a great explanation and very helpful
Good.
understanding of shelter work.
Okay. Great.
Um, so, speaking of Mythbusters, let's take one more on, if you don't
Okay.
mind.
Okay.
I hear people say, "Oh, I don't want to go to a shelter because all the animals there, all the dogs there are pit bulls and chihuahuas, and
Yeah.
that's not what I'm
Yeah.
looking for."
Yeah. I would say, take a look at our website. Yes, we do have pit bulls and chihuahuas. Actually, in our Midwest region, it's mostly pit bulls, not so much chihuahuas. But I know, other shelters out west do also have a lot of the little chi-chis as well. However, pit bulls, or what we would associate as a pit bull type, do not make up the majority of our dog population. We do have a lot of other types of animals as well. We probably lean a little bit heavier on the quote unquote mutts, just the good old brown shelter dogs. We like to call them, the Chicago mix. That, mom was a mix and dad was a mix, and then put them together and you get the cutest little mix as well. But the vast majority of our animals, of our dogs in particular, are not pit bulls. That is definitely a myth that most of them are pit bulls. Um, I think more emphasis, bringing that truth to light, talking about that a little more is going to help us sort of reverse that myth that most of the animals are pit bulls. On the other end of that, I would say pit bulls are a wonderful breed of dog. And
Thank you for bringing that up. That was going
yes,
to be my next question.
absolutely. And even if on any given day we seem to have a little bit more, of that pit mix in the kennels or available for adoption, they make great family dogs. There's a reason. Is it the R gang from back in the day that had their mascot or their dog
Spanky
was?
and our gang.
Yeah, exactly. That
Spanky and
was
our
a,
gang. Yeah, with the
a
big black.
with the big patch. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
That was a pit bull.
right.
And there it was hanging out. It was just one of the gang. And so pit bulls are, make fabulous family dogs. And so for folks that might be a little bit nervous of the breed, or maybe have heard one too many headlines that makes them a little bit concerned, I would invite them to come in and just spend a little time, with some of the dogs that we have in our care, and they'll find pit bulls are some of the sweetest animals that you can adopt. In fact, they get the reputation sometimes of being a land hippo, because they are just these, sort of blobs of couch potato that make great family pets.
Excellent.
Mhm.
So, speaking of people coming in and looking at
Mhm.
dogs, let's take a few minutes, if you don't mind, to talk about what an adopter can expect. Because I know when I adopted Corey, the process was far more arduous than I ever expected. And at first, I was almost like, wait a second, I got to do what? I got to fill out how
Yeah,
many pages? You need to know what about me?
right,
what?
right.
Um,
Yes,
and at first, I was almost a little put off, and thankfully, I was like, okay, this just needs to be done. Let's just do it.
just
But can
slog
you
through.
kind of walk
Mhm.
us through the process? Because I think it would have been easier for me
Mhm.
had I had a better understanding of the process before
Sure.
I started it. So, at Anti Cruelty Society, if I want to adopt a cat,
Mhm.
dog, or tarantula, what's my process?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so at Anti-Cruelty, we subscribe to a philosophy called open adoptions. So just like we are open admissions on the intake end of things, on the outcome end of things, we are open adoptions as well, which means that all adopters are welcome. I think animal welfare or animal shelters probably, in the 70s, 80s, maybe even a little bit in the 90s as well, generated this reputation of being too closed off and too protective of the animals in our care. And, I'll give us a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, probably for good reason. Sometimes, a lot of the animals that come to us come from maybe not such great situations. And so we want to be very cautious about their next family. We want to make sure that it is a good, solid match. But like all things, we're evolving and we are doing better and we're figuring out how to make the community part of the solution for the animals that are in our care. And so basically, there is a small application that we ask all interested parties to fill out, but you don't need an appointment. Anybody can come at any time as long as we're open. We are generally open from noon until 7 p.m., but check our website, anticruelty.org, for specific hours. You come in, peruse our kennels, take a look at the dogs that we have available, or if you're on the cat side, take a look at the cats that we have in our adoption room. Take a few animals out for a walk, get to know them, sort of read their bio, talk to the volunteers and staff that are working that day to find out a little bit more detail about their personality, talk to the staff and volunteers who are working that day about what you're looking for in an animal. We don't want to just give the animals to anybody who comes in. We want to make sure that we're making a good match. If you are an avid runner and you're training for a marathon and you're looking for a running buddy, we don't want to give you a couch potato, or vice versa. If you're someone who just wants to curl up and watch Netflix and, enjoy your evenings in that regard, we don't want to give you a high energy dog, or we don't want to, point you in that direction. So we want to make a good match. So step one is come in, take a look at the animals that we have available. You can even do some pre-work. I would say step zero would be to look at our website. Our website is updated in real time. So as soon as an animal becomes available, it goes onto our website. And as soon as it is adopted, it comes down from our website. So if an animal is on our website, it absolutely is available. And then once you find your match, once you think that you've got a good pick, you can go ahead and fill out an application. Again, it's basic information. You'll sit down with a adoption counselor to sort of talk through what next steps are going to be, what to prepare, what has been done with the animal already. We'll give you some updated vaccine records. We'll let you know when the animal, if and when the animal needs to be seen by a veterinarian next. We'll make recommendations for you on how to feed the animal, or what type of exercise to provide, or what type of products to buy. What bed is better than, a different bed, or what toys would this dog prefer. We'll sort of walk you through whatever questions that you have, and then that's it. You take the animal and you go home, and then you enjoy your time. And so on any given day, depending on how busy we are, I would say that whole process maybe takes about 1 to 2 hours, depending on how long you take visiting with the animals ahead of sitting down for your counseling session.
Okay, great. And and do you do some screening through that application process?
We not necessarily. So we don't do home checks. We don't do veterinary checks. We just take the person at their word that they are in telling us the truth. In conversation, again, we might be answering questions. We might be sort of talking through solutions. Somebody might say, "I don't have a fenced-in yard," and so then we can give them recommendations about, how many walks per day that the dog is going to need, or maybe how to set up a little private area in your backyard. Or if someone says, I work 8 hours a day, so do you have any recommendations on dog walkers in my area? We talk through all of those potential quote unquote barriers and help them find solutions to make sure that the pet is integrating into their life.
Okay. Well, clearly you do, as you have for more than 100 years, a lot of really great work, not just for animals, but for the people who love them. So let's talk about how people can help your organization. You said you don't get any government funding, really. So,
Yeah,
so
that's
let's talk
a
about
lot to.
how the different ways people can help.
Absolutely. So, number one way I would say is to volunteer for anti-cruelty. We cannot get the job done without a lot of on-site support, and that includes foster homes. We're always looking to recruit additional foster homes. We have a finite capacity on site. We have only so many kennels. We have only so many, community cat rooms that we can fill. And so having foster homes increases our capacity for care. The more foster homes that we have, the more impact that we can have for animals. And so I'm always recruiting for fosters and for volunteers to help us care for those animals here on site. We're always looking for donations. If you're at the store and you come across a great sale on food or toys or treats or litter or any of those types of supplies, even dish towels and bath towels, all of the supplies that it requires to care for the animals here, we're always looking for donations. We have a wish list on our website, anticruelty.org. We have an Amazon wish list. We have a Chewy wish list. We have them located everywhere there. That's another way. Financial support, of course. We cannot run a shelter without the financial support of a lot of people. And again, anti-cruelty is so blessed and lucky to have so many friends that look out for the animals that we're caring for in a financial way. And so, again, you can make donations on our website. You can give me a call. We can talk through specifically how to do that. I'm happy to help anybody in that regard as well. And generally, also another way to help our shelter and to frankly support animal shelters across the country is to promote our product, share our stories if you're on social media, help them go viral, talk to your friends about your local animal shelter, about the good work that anti-cruelty is doing, encourage that narrative in your general happenings and communications with your friends and family and colleagues and in your network.
Okay. And we will include on our website under Corey Cares for the time that this video is featured, we'll put a link to the Anti-Cruelty Society donation page so that
Wonderful.
people can,
Excellent.
if you're on Corey, www.corey's.corner.com, go to Corey's Cares and
Okay.
you will find out more about the Anti-Cruelty Society and how to donate to them. So we're so proud of the work that you do and so grateful for the work that you do. And of course, two more ways people can help, I would guess, is spay and neuter their pets, especially cats.
Definitely, definitely. And you can do that at Anti-Cruelty. We can help you do that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then, of
We
course, adopt.
absolutely, exactly. Yes, and the more the merrier.
Right, exactly. Exactly. Well, we have been talking with Darlene Duggan, who is the president of the Anti-Cruelty Society. As you probably guessed, she's had a great in-depth career in animal health and welfare for more than 20 years, most of it at the Anti-Cruelty Society of Chicago. And we're very lucky to have her here in town leading this really esteemed organization and helping make the world a better place for animals and the people who love them. So stay tuned for more discussion in the future from Corey's Corner.com. And thank you so much, Darlene. We appreciate all that you and your team do at the Anti-Cruelty Society of Chicago.
Wonderful. And we thank you, Virginia, for helping us share our story.
Great. Thank you for tuning in. Corey's Corner.com.